A woman weaves on the upper floor of a house in Akrotiri. Sun comes through the high window. Her child plays on the floor with a small dog. She does not know that the mountain behind her city has begun to listen to itself. This is the story of the civilization the sea took twice. The first, a woman weaves on the upper floor of a house in Akrotiri on a small Aegean island called Thera. Her hands move along the loom without looking. Her child is on the floor with a small dog. It is some morning around the year 1620 BC, and the wall above her head is painted with blue lilies. The second, an Englishman in a felt hat, sits alone in a stone chair in the ruins of a Cretan palace. The year is 1925. He is 74 years old. Behind him, two griffins painted in red and Aegean blue stand on a wall that was repainted last month on his orders. He looks at peace. The third, a woman in latex gloves, crouches in a covered excavation pit. The year is now. Under the soft brush in her hand, a procession of figures emerges from the ash. The blue is the original blue. The red is the original red. Nothing has been invented. These three rooms are separated by 3,500 years and by one of the largest volcanic explosions in human history. The first room is about to be buried. The second is built half a century before the third is opened. And the people who lived in the first room never called themselves what we call them. The name we use for them, Minoan, was given to them by the man in the second room. He took it from a Greek myth. They had been silent for 35 centuries when he began to speak for them, and he liked the sound of his own voice. This is the story of the first great civilization of Europe. It is the story of the volcano that buried half of it, and of the slow century in which the rest bled to death. And it is the story of the man who found what was left and could not stop himself from filling in the gaps. Who were they? What did the sea take? And what did the man who found them take from what the sea had left? A girl of about 18 stands on a stony hillside above the north coast of Crete. It is just before dawn. The wind off the Aegean is still cold, and it smells of salt and crushed thyme where her goats have been walking. She holds a wooden staff in her right hand. The handle is smooth where her grandmother's hand wore it down, then her mother's, now hers. Below her, the sea is gray, not yet blue. North of the sea, far past where she can see, is a country she has heard about in stories, a country of pyramids and a river that does not rain. East of the sea, also too far to see, is another country of horses and lions in carved stone. Behind her, to the south, a ridge of mountains hides the long, fertile plain her people call Messara. She has never been there. Most of her people, most of their lives, never go there. She lives in a small village of stone houses near a place archaeologists will one day call Myrtos. There are perhaps 50 people in her village. They keep goats and sheep. They press olives. In spring, men go down to the harbor and bring back obsidian, black volcanic glass for cutting, that came from an island called Melos. Copper sometimes arrives by ship from Cyprus. Egyptian beads, very rarely, from somewhere far south. Her village is small, but it is connected to the world. The year is roughly 2500 before the Common Era. The people on this island have been here for thousands of years. They will be here, in this way, for another 600 years before they begin to build palaces. By then, in northern Europe, Stonehenge will be a circle of standing stones. In Mesopotamia, Ur and Lagash will be old cities. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid will already be 2 centuries weathered. She does not know any of this. She knows where the goats go in the morning, and the smell of the wind, and the names of the 4 families on the hill across the valley. She knows that her people have always been here. This is Crete, before the palaces. "600 years pass. A stonemason is sweating in the noon sun on a hill called Kephala in the north of Crete. He is about 35 years old. The weight is on his back and on the inside of his elbows. He and 7 other men are walking a block of limestone, the long edge of it as long as a man is tall, across wooden rollers laid down the slope. The stone smells of dust and his own sweat. The rollers creak under it in a slow, steady rhythm. He has been working on this hill for 9 years. When he started, the slope was bare. Now the foundations are exposed in the shape of a great rectangle around an open inner court, and walls are rising on all 4 sides. There will be storerooms with rows of clay jars taller than a man, full of olive oil and wine and barley. There will be workshops and small shrines and rooms whose use he does not understand because he is a mason and not a priest. There will be drains running underneath the floor that carry wastewater out. He has helped lay those drains. He is proud of them. The year is roughly 1900 before the Common Era. On this island, at this moment, 4 such buildings are going up at Pots, at Knossos here, at Phaistos in the south, at Millennia and Zakros on the east coast. Together, they will be the first palaces in Europe. But that word, palace, does not quite fit. There is no throne room at the heart of any of them. There is no great king in carved stone, no record of a single ruler with a name. The largest of them, Knossos, will cover 20,000 square meters and contain over 1,000 rooms. And no archaeologist who digs it up 3,500 years from now will be able to find a king. The mason does not know any of this. He knows the weight of the stone, the rhythm of the rollers, and where the next drain has to run. The palaces are rising. "300 years pass. A woman of about 25 is standing on a wooden plank, painting a wall in Knossos. The plaster on the wall is wet, laid down at dawn by another woman, smoothed flat, still cool to the touch. She has perhaps 1 hour. The lime in the plaster will close around her pigment as it dries. After that, nothing she puts on the wall will stay. The painting must happen now. Beside her, on a small wooden stool, is a clay jar with blue powder in it. The powder is Egyptian blue, calcium copper silicate, fired in furnaces along the Nile and traded across the sea in small leather bags. There is a jar of red beside it, cinnabar, mercury sulfide from somewhere east. There is yellow ochre, there is white from lime, black from carbon. Her right hand is stained blue under the fingernails. She has been painting since first light. The wall above her brush is becoming a procession of women. They are walking in profile, in elaborate skirts with long, dark braids. They are carrying offerings. Behind them, painted yesterday, are lilies. Beside the lilies, in another room she finished last month, an octopus curls its arms around an entire ceramic jar. In a corridor down the hall, a young man is leaping over the back of a bull, his hands on the horns, his body airborne. In another room, blue dolphins swim across a wall as if the wall were the sea. This is the visual repertoire of an entire civilization. None of it is in stone like the carvings of Egypt or the reliefs of Assyria. All of it is on plaster, painted in that 1 wet hour, made to last only as long as the wall holds. She does not think about how long the wall will hold. She thinks about the curve of the next woman's skirt, the angle of the next braid, the time she has left before the lime closes. The blue goes down. The brush moves. The wall is alive for an hour. A girl of 16 sits cross-legged on a low stone bench in a small room at Hagia Triada on the south coast of Crete. In her left hand is a slab of wet clay no larger than her palm. In her right hand is a stylus cut from a reed, sharpened on one end to a flat triangular tip. The clay is cool and sticky under her thumb. The reed makes a small, dry sound when she presses it into the surface, a sound between a scrape and a tick. Across from her, on another bench, sits the woman who has been teaching her for 2 years. The teacher leans forward and points to a sign the girl has just made. The sign is wrong. The girl can feel the heat rising in her face. She knows it is wrong. She knew it was wrong while she was making it. She made it anyway, because her hand was tired, and she thought the teacher would not see it. The teacher sees everything. This is a Minoan archive. There are perhaps 200 tablets, like the one in the girl's hand, stacked along the walls, dried in the sun, organized by category. Most of them are administrative, lists of goods, lists of people, records of how much oil came in from which estate this month. A smaller number are something else. Short inscriptions on stone, offering tables, found in shrines and on mountain peaks. Those use the same signs, but in a different rhythm. They feel like prayer. There are about 90 distinct signs in this writing system. They will one day be called Linear A. We can read them. We know how to pronounce many of them because some pass into a later script that we have learned to read. We can read the sound Jasasarame. We do not know what Jasasarame means. This is not the first Bronze Age script the modern world cannot read. It will not be the last. The girl smooths over her bad sign with the flat of the stylus. The clay closes. She tries again. The teacher waits. The weaver from the cold open is back at her loom. She is on the upper floor of her house on the small Aegean island called Thera, in the city called Akrotiri. She is about 30. The morning sun is coming through the high window of the second story, and the stone bench under her is warm where it catches the light. Her feet are bare on the painted floor. The wool in her hands is still slightly greasy. The lanolin has not been fully washed out, and her fingers smell of it. The window above her bench opens onto the harbor. She can hear, without looking, the sounds of the harbor at mid-morning. Fishermen are salting sardines on the quay. A boy is calling out to another boy. A crew is loading clay jars onto a wide-bellied ship that came in 3 days ago from the south. The men on the deck speak a language she has heard before but does not understand. The ship is from Egypt. The jars are going back full of saffron and olive oil. Somewhere down the street, oil is heating in someone's kitchen, and the smell is climbing up the stairwell into her room. Her child, who is about 5, is on the floor by the door with a small, short-legged dog. The child is talking to the dog. The dog is listening. The city she lives in has about 5,000 people. Her house is one of perhaps 400 in the city, most of them 2 stories tall, some 3. Inside her house, there is a stairway. There is a small room on the ground floor that drains wastewater out through a clay pipe under the street. On the wall behind her loom, painted 3 years ago by a woman who lived 2 streets over, there is a row of dark blue swallows in flight against a yellow sky. These walls, her walls, the wall of swallows, the painted lilies in her neighbor's stairwell, the boxers and the fishermen in houses further down the street, these walls will survive. She does not know this. She is weaving wool. The mountain above her city is quiet today. What we have in this part of the world, in this stretch of years, is something the rest of Europe will not have for another 1,000 years. Cities with running drains, buildings of 2 and 3 stories, workshops trading saffron and oil with Egypt, women painting walls, children playing in upstairs rooms with small dogs, an archive of administrative tablets in a script of their own, palaces, though no one rules from a throne in any of them, covering 20,000 square meters around an open inner court. This is a working civilization. It has been working in some recognizable form for 1,100 years. It is connected to the world by sea. It has roughly another 200 years of full vigor ahead of it. But not all of it has another 200 years. On the small island of Thera, 110 kilometers north of the Cretan coast, the mountain above Akrotiri is no longer entirely quiet. Some days it makes a sound that is not quite a sound, more pressure in the chest than noise in the ear. The seabirds notice it before the people do. They stop nesting on certain ledges. They move. The weaver is still at her loom. The mountain is starting to listen to itself again. A fisherman of about 50 is tying his boat at the quay in Akrotiri just after dawn. He has been on the water since the 2nd hour before sunrise. He is hungry and his hands are cold. He looks at the stone pillar where he secures his rope. The water line on the pillar is lower than it was last week, lower than it was last month. He runs his thumb along the dry stone above the water and feels the line where the salt has left its old mark. The height the sea was, for as long as he can remember being a fisherman. The sea is below that line now by the length of his hand and half again. He has known the harbor since he was a boy. The sea does not do this. He looks up, above the city, behind the houses where his daughter and his daughter's children live. The cone of the mountain rises against the early sky. A thin, white column of smoke is going straight up from the summit. There is no wind today. The smoke does not bend. It rises in a clean, vertical line until it disappears into the haze. There is a smell on the air that has not gone away since 2 nights ago. A faint sourness, like a struck match held too long. He has tried not to notice it. The other fishermen at the quay are not talking. 2 of them are looking at the mountain. 1 is looking at the waterline. None of them is saying anything. Under his feet, on the stones of the quay, there is a small, steady tremor. He has been telling himself for 3 weeks that the tremor is in his own legs, from the boat, from age, from poor sleep. The tremor is not in his legs. There are no seabirds this morning. The cliffs to the east, which are usually loud at this hour, are silent. He does not know the word for what is happening. There is no word for it in his language, because no one in his language has ever seen it. He goes home to wake his family. The shaking is different this morning. The weaver is at her loom. Her husband, who works copper at a forge 2 streets over, has not yet left the house. The child is sitting up in bed. The dog is standing on stiff legs in the doorway, watching the rafters. A line of dust falls from a beam in the ceiling, then another. The weaver looks up. The dust is falling steadily now, the way dry sand falls through fingers. The house is making a small, low sound she has not heard before, a sound coming up through the floor. She puts down the shuttle. Her husband is already on his feet. He takes the child onto his hip. The dog runs out the door and back in. The weaver looks at her loom for a moment, the way you look at something you mean to come back to. Then she follows them down the stairs. Outside, the street is full. Everyone is going one way, toward the harbor. They are not running. They are walking quickly, carrying small bundles. calling each other by name. A potter is closing his shutters. A woman leads her elderly mother by the elbow. Two boys pull a goat on a rope. The sky behind the houses has changed. The column of smoke above the mountain is no longer thin. It is wide as the mountain itself, and dark, and it is climbing into the air faster than the eye can keep up with. By the time they reach the harbor, the column is higher than any cloud anyone has ever seen, and it is still climbing. The sun comes through it in patches. The boats are loading. This is the eruption that will one day be measured at the 7th level of the volcanic explosivity index, of which there are 8. The column will reach 30 kilometers within the hour. It will reach 60 by nightfall. Pumice the size of a man's fist will fall 30 kilometers away. But for the people walking down the stone streets of Akrotiri with bundles in their arms, none of that is yet visible. What is visible is the boats. They go to the boats. No bodies will be found in this city. Late afternoon, on the open sea between Thera and Crete, a sailor stands at the prow of a Minoan ship under a square linen sail. He is the lookout. He is in his 30s. He has worked this route since he was a boy. He knows the wind and the current and the way the water rolls when there is weather coming. He does not know what the water is doing now. There are 19 other ships visible from where he stands, spread out across the sea behind and beside him. There are perhaps 80 more behind those, in a long, ragged line that began at the harbor of Akrotiri before mid-morning and is still leaving the harbor as the sun begins to lower. The ships are full. There are families on the deck around him. A woman is holding a folded blanket in her lap and not moving. A child has been asleep for 2 hours. No one is speaking. Above the island behind them, the column of ash is now 60 kilometers tall. It has begun to bend at the top, the way a great tree bends when its crown is too heavy. The light over the ships is the color of lead. It has been the color of lead since noon. He looks back the way he has been looking back for hours to see what the island is doing. The island is no longer there. In the space of one held breath, 4/5 of Thera has collapsed inward. 60 cubic kilometers of rock and magma have just vanished into the floor of the sea. There is, for a moment, no sound at all. The column of ash and the air around it and the surface of the water for 50 kilometers in every direction seem to have agreed to be silent together. He does not understand why this is frightening. Then he does. Under the keel of his ship, the water is going the wrong way. It is pulling back toward the island. It is pulling back faster than current. The ship is leaning. The families on the deck are looking at him because he is the lookout, and that is his job, to know. He turns to face forward. He looks at the sea ahead of the ship. The sea ahead of the ship is rising. A line of gray ash is falling on the deck like a fine cold snow. He does not have time to call to the captain. Archaeologists have never found the refugee fleet of Akrotiri. The ships did not arrive at any harbor that left a record. On the north coast of Crete, at sites called Palikastro and Amnissos, the wave came ashore at heights between 9 and 35 meters and left a layer of sea floor debris inside what had been houses. That debris is how we know what the water did. We have no record of what it did to the boats. The Minoan fleet was based on the north coast of Crete. After that afternoon, there was no Minoan fleet. A generation later, a man of about 50 seals a clay tablet in an underground storeroom of the palace at Knossos. He is the senior administrator of the Western Archive. He has worked in this room since he was 16. He places the sealed tablet on a shelf beside others he sealed earlier today. The shelf is half empty. Last year, it was full by this date. He notes on a wax-coated wooden board he keeps for his own records the amount of olive oil received this month from the estates in the south. Less than last year. He notes the amount of barley. Less. He notes the wool tally. Less. He has been writing the word for less so often that his hand makes the sign without thinking. There are 2 oil lamps burning in the room. There used to be 4. Oil is being rationed in the palace. The volcano fell into the sea 67 years ago. He was born after that. He knows about it the way a man knows about a war his grandfather fought in. The fleet that did not come back is a story his uncles told. The harbors on the north coast that were rebuilt after the wave are now smaller than the harbors of the south. The palace still works. The drains still drain. The painters still paint when there is plaster, which is less often. Linear A is still being written in this room, in his hand, on tablets like the one he sealed a moment ago. But it is being written by fewer people, on fewer tablets, in a building that needs fewer rooms. 50 years from now, in the year archaeologists will eventually call 1710 before the Common Era, then revise again, a fire will move through the palaces of Crete. No one knows exactly how it starts. After it stops, Linear A is no longer being written in any of them. A different script is. The new script writes a different language. The language is Greek. The administrator does not know any of this. He seals the next tablet. "300 years pass. A scribe at Knossos finishes a tablet in a script that is no longer Linear A. It is Linear B, the script the Greeks brought when they came, and the language is the early Greek of horsemen and shield-bearers. He is the last man in this room to write anything for 400 years. He does not know that. He hears the noise of fires on the hills outside, and he knows that the news from the east, from the cities along the coast of Anatolia, has been bad for a long time. He smells smoke. He sets the tablet down. He goes home. He does not come back. Around him, the palace empties. 400 years later, in a hall lit by braziers on an island called Ionia, a singer with a hoarse voice is reaching the end of a long performance. The court he is singing for has eaten well. He has been on his feet for an hour. He sings. There is a land called Crete, in the midst of the wine-dark sea, fair and fertile, sea-girt, and there are many men in it, beyond counting, and 90 cities. Among them is Knossos, the great city where Minos, for 9 years, was king. The men around the brazier nod. They know the song. They have heard it from other singers. They believe the song is true. 300 years after that, in Athens, a man named Thucydides is writing the first book of a history of a war. The wind off the Saronic Gulf is moving the curtain at his window. The reed pen makes a small scratching noise on the papyrus. He writes, Minos was the most ancient of all those who, by report, possessed a navy. He held command of most of what is now called the Greek Sea. He has no document to support this. He has only the song. 2,300 years pass. A man named Heinrich Schliemann sits at a mahogany desk in his house in Athens. It is the spring of 1885. He is 63 years old, and 15 years ago he stood inside the walls of Troy that everyone had told him was a Greek poem. On the desk in front of him is a map of Crete. Beside the map is a letter in Ottoman Turkish, sealed in red wax. The letter is from the man who owns a small hill in the north of the island, near a village called Heraklion. The hill is called Kafala. The owner is not willing to sell. Schliemann reads the letter twice. He runs his thumb along the cracked wax seal. He has been trying to buy this hill for 2 years. He believes, he is certain, that under the dust and the goats of that hill is a Bronze Age palace older than Homer. He believes it is the palace of Minos. He will be told no twice more. He will die in Naples in 1890 without ever putting a shovel in its ground. The hill waits. In 1898, the people of Crete win their autonomy from the Ottoman Empire. The hill of Kefala is now for sale. There is a man with money on his way. On the morning of March 23, 1900, Sir Arthur Evans stands on the hill of Kefala in the north of Crete, his feet crossed at the ankles, his felt hat tipped against the early sun. He is 49 years old. He is a widower. He has been a widower for 7 years. The grief made him work harder. In front of him, 6 Cretan laborers he hired in the village 2 days ago are digging into the soft red earth. He has paid for everything: the land, the tools, the men. He owns the hill. His father, John Evans, owned a paper mill company in England that made him rich. The rich father raised a rich son who could afford to buy a hill in a foreign country on a hunch. He has spent his whole life on hunches that paid out. The smell here is dry earth and crushed thyme. The thyme is everywhere on this hillside. It comes up to his knees. He has been thinking about this hill for almost a decade. The Greek antiquities markets in Athens have been selling small carved seal stones for years. Gemstones the size of a knuckle with images on them no one in Greece could explain. Bulls, lilies, acrobats. The dealers said they came from Crete. Evans believed they came from a civilization no one knew was there. He believed it was older than Mycenae. He believed it was older than the Greeks themselves. In the second minute of digging, one of the laborers' shovels strikes stone. Not earth, stone. Evans does not move. He has been waiting for this sound since 1894. By the end of the first week, the laborers have exposed 3 corridors and a row of giant clay storage jars. By the end of the first month, they have exposed a small room with a stone chair against one wall. Evans will call that chair a throne. He will call the room the throne room. By the end of 7 months, he has given the entire civilization a name. He took it from Homer's Odyssey, from the line about Minos, who was king at Knossos for 9 years. He called them the Minoans. They never called themselves that. Two streets behind the dig, in a small house Evans has rented as a workshop, a Swiss painter named Edouard Guilleron is standing in front of a wall. He is in his late 30s. There is a brush in his right hand and the smell of linseed oil and turpentine in the room. He and his father have been hired by Evans to do what Evans calls restoration. On the wall in front of him is a figure painted at life size. The figure is a man. He is walking forward, his chest bare, his head crowned with lilies, his right hand at his side. The blue behind him is Aegean blue. The red of the lilies is cinnabar red. He is graceful. He is, when he is finished, going to be one of the most famous images of the Bronze Age. On a stone table next to Guilleron is the evidence the man on the wall was painted from. The evidence is small. There is a fragment of plaster the size of a coin with part of a chest on it. There is a fragment the size of a thumb with part of a forearm. There is a fragment with part of a foot. There is a fragment with the curve of something that might be a hip. None of them touch. None of them were found in the same room. 2 of them, archaeologists will later determine, almost certainly do not belong to the same figure. One of them may not even be male. Guilleron does not think of himself as inventing. He thinks of himself as completing. The brush is firm in his hand because he believes he is restoring a Bronze Age man whose body has been partially eaten by time. He is a serious painter doing a serious job. In the next room, his father is finishing the head of a woman. There were no fragments of her head. He has painted her face from imagination. She will be called the Lady in Blue. In a third room, another figure is taking shape. Her arm and shoulder come from a different woman's fresco. She will be called the Lady with the Lilies. Arthur Evans is not a forger. He is an archaeologist of his time. He has unlimited money and a theory. He believes the Minoans were a peaceful civilization who worshipped a great mother goddess, and he is funding paintings that show exactly that. He will publish the frescoes in his books without telling the reader which lines were on the wall in 1500 BC and which were painted by Guilleron in 1910. For the next 50 years, every European schoolchild who learns about the Bronze Age Aegean will learn it through these images. The images are not lies. They are not the truth either. Every Minoan archaeologist who has worked since does two jobs. One is to study the Minoans. The other is to undo Arthur Evans. Guilleron lays down the brush. The figure on the wall is almost finished. He is proud of his work. "67 years after Evans began at Knossos, a man of 66 is crouched in a trench with a soft brush in his hand. His name is Spiridon Marinatos. He has been working on the small island of Santorini, once called Thera, for 2 weeks. The trench was opened 7 days ago. He thinks there is a city under the ash. Almost no one else does. The ash is fine, almost like talc. He is removing it from the surface of a stone wall, half a centimeter at a time. The brush is the kind used to paint thin lines on porcelain. The site is quiet. He can hear the wind over the rim of the caldera and the footsteps of a colleague 20 meters away. Nothing else. Under the brush, slowly, the wall changes color. Blue comes up out of the ash. Not a fragment of blue, not a chip. A line of blue, clean, intact, running along the wall for the width of his hand and then his forearm. It is Aegean blue. It is the same blue the Minoans painted with 3,500 years ago. It is the blue that, in Knossos, exists only on walls that someone repainted. Here, in Akrotiri, it is the blue itself. He does not move for a long moment. He has been proposing for 35 years that the eruption of this volcano destroyed the Minoan civilization. Almost everyone in his profession told him he was wrong. He kept proposing it. He kept asking for money to dig here. He got the money, finally, in 1967. Now he is in the trench. Over the next 7 years, the city of Akrotiri will come up out of the ash around him. Boxers, fishermen, ladies in blue robes carrying offerings, saffron gatherers, a boy in a blue room. The walls are not fragments. The walls are whole. The colors are the colors the painters mixed. In October of 1974, on the site he had spent the last 7 years opening, Spiridon Marinatos died of a fall. He was 73. He is buried at Akrotiri. A younger archaeologist named Christos Dumas takes over the work. He is 41 years old. He is still alive. He is still working. "25 years later, the spring of 1925, Arthur Evans, 74 years old, sits in a folding canvas chair in the throne room he has spent a quarter-century restoring. The walls have been repainted within the last year. On the wall behind the throne, 2 griffins in cinnabar red and Aegean blue face outward against a field of cream-colored plaster. The griffins were painted 3 months ago by the younger Guilleron from Evans's design. The wall itself is original. The griffins are not. He has positioned his chair to face the stone seat against the north wall. The chair he named 25 years ago the throne of Minos. The warm Mediterranean wind moves through the open doorway. The sun has begun to lower, and the shadow of the painted griffin is falling across his shoulder. There are no tourists today. There almost never are. The Sayat belongs to him. He looks at the empty throne. He chooses again who sat in it. He has decided in the books he has been publishing since 1921 that the Minoans were ruled not by a king, but by a priestess of a great mother goddess. He has decided the figure who sat here was the highest of those priestesses. Later, archaeologists will conclude that the throne was almost certainly installed during the late Mycenaean period, after the Minoans were gone, for a Greek conqueror, not a Minoan priestess. Evans knows what the evidence does and does not say. He writes a priestess. He is at peace. He looks like a man at peace, 101 years later. The spring of 2026, a woman is crouched in a covered excavation pit on a small Aegean island that was once called Thera. The pit is part of the Akrotiri site. Above her, a modern shelter of steel and translucent panels filters the morning light onto the ancient plaster. She is wearing latex gloves and holding a soft brush. Around her, the city of Akrotiri is the work of generations who came after Marinatos, including Duma, who is still in charge and who is now 92 years old. Under her brush, slowly, a wall changes. Figures emerge from the volcanic ash. They are women. They are walking in procession. Their hair is braided in long, dark plaits. Their robes are layered, woven, the patterns precise. The blue is Aegean blue. The red is cinnabar red. There is a yellow so gold it looks lit from behind. The fresco is whole. The archaeologist works slowly. She does not need to imagine what is missing because in front of her, nothing is missing. The painters mixed the paint. The volcano sealed it. 3,500 years could not reach it. She moves the brush 1/4 centimeter forward. The next braid comes up out of the ash. The thread was held. The man who held it rewrote part of the cloth where it had frayed beyond his patience. And so others in smaller rooms, on smaller islands, took up the brush again. They tried not to invent. For about 1,400 years, on an island in the Aegean, people built palaces around open courtyards. They painted blue dolphins on walls that have not survived, and saffron gatherers on walls that have. They traded with Egypt. They drained their wastewater through pipes. They wrote in a script of their own on small tablets dried in the sun. They left no record of a king. A woman on a smaller island in the same sea sat at a loom on the upper floor of her house and wove wool for her child while the sun warmed the stone bench under her. We do not know her name. We do not know where she went the morning the mountain began to listen to itself. We do not know whether she was on a boat the next afternoon or somewhere else, or whether anyone she loved survived. We know only that her city was empty when the ash came down. Then a mountain on her island fell into the sea, and the wave reached the cities of Crete, and the fleet that had been built over generations did not come back. And the ships that had left her harbor the morning of the explosion never arrived at any port that recorded them. And after that, the civilization bled for 200 years. And after that, it was forgotten for 3,000. The question is not what happened to them. We know what happened to them. The volcano is in the sediment. The tsunami debris is in the walls of Palai-Castro. The dates can be argued by a few decades. The shape of the thing is clear. The question is what we did when we found them. A man with money came to Crete in 1900 and dug a hill that no one had ever dug. He found a Bronze Age palace older than Homer. He named it. He named the civilization after a Greek myth, because the people who built the palace had been silent for 3,500 years and could not correct him. Then he repainted it. He painted what he believed had been there, because what had been there was not enough for him. He published the paintings as discoveries. For 50 years, the world saw the Minoans through the brush of a Swiss painter. The fragments are still there, the real ones, the ones the size of a coin and the size of a thumb. Every archaeologist who has worked at Knossos since has spent a portion of their career undoing the man who first uncovered it. On a different island, 110 kilometers north, the ash got to the walls first. The painters who painted those walls did not know they were sealing themselves into the future. The volcano did the sealing. 3,500 years did not eat what the ash protected. The colors are the colors. The figures are the figures. There is nothing to invent. We still cannot read linear A. We can read the sound of it. We do not know what the sound means. We may never know. That silence is not a failure. The civilization existed. It is not required to speak to us in order to have existed. The people who live on Crete today are descended in part from the people who built the palaces. The civilization was not extinguished. It was absorbed. Their language did not survive. Their faces did. The sea swallowed the cities. The men who found them sometimes swallowed what they could not understand, but the work continues. The fragments wait. The Minoans lost cities. The fleet that did not come back from the open sea was the beginning of a slow erasure that took centuries. But what was lost in pieces, and what survived in pieces, and the island they lived on remained an island, and on it, eventually, people lived again. That is not the worst thing the sea can do. Long before the Minoans, before Crete had a name, before there was such a thing as a Bronze Age, there was a country between what is now England and what is now Holland. There was forest, there were rivers, there were hunters who lived in the forest beside the rivers. They had names for things. They had places they slept, and places they fished, and places they buried their dead. They had children, they had stories. Then the ice melted, and the North Sea rose, and the country went under. We have no name for it from any of the people who lived there. The word we use was given to it in 1998, 8,000 years late. The Minoans lost cities. The next civilization lost the country itself. Every empire ends. The thread does not. Subscribe to the long thread. The next civilization is being prepared.